We're about to begin the service, Ms. Joan P. Moss. And I ask if any of you have a cell phone or any other noise-making device to please turn it to the off position. Officiating our service here today is Rabbi Karen Aviv.
Good morning, everyone. We're here to honor and remember the life of Joan Moss. She was a mother, a grandmother, an artist, and a friend. She will be remembered by many, and she was very loved. I'm going to call on David Moss, her son, to offer Psalm 23 and a eulogy to remember your mom.
Hello, can you hear me? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Great, huh? And it's the King James Version, which is the best. So, I wrote all this stuff, but at the last minute, I abandoned my writing. So I'm just thinking, improvising, but yeah, it's hard to absorb the notion that my mother's not going to call me 6 times a day to ask mundane questions, or that she won't come over for dinner Friday or Monday or Tuesday or any of the other days of the week anymore. No more going to her favorite restaurants. All of you guys who know my mother, who've known her for a long time before she started to mellow out, know that feedback. Okay. It's called off-access miking. The mic is too hot. Hi, Ed. I'm so glad to see you. And Ed is in the picture too, all the things I just described of these guys sitting at the table and Ed kidding my mother. He knew all her little tricks very quickly. He figured her out, which showed a high level of perceptivity. And yeah, you know, my mother was unique. All you guys know that. She was a great conversationalist, especially when she was in her full, you know, one of the most satisfying people to talk to who I've ever known. You always felt like you were being comprehended, you know, I always felt like I was being comprehended when I talked with her. There was no subject that she didn't have worthwhile thoughts about. And in general, even if she had nothing to say, she was really comprehending. And so I feel that's a great loss. And she would listen to me when I would get angry and rant and rave, as I'm prone to do, and manage to calm me down, which not many people can. She had an incredible eye. I was always amazed by how quickly she could size up a picture, which is why her photography was so great, you know? She could just look at something and get exactly the essence of the thing. And she was great to consult about how to dress. She was a phenomenal dresser. You know, if you wondered what goes with what, there was no better person to ask, am I correct? And yeah, it's impossible for me to think. So, but anyway, everybody who's here is somebody who was close to her, and I'm glad to see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let's see if this is... No, I think, can everybody hear me now? Okay. We're going to hear a eulogy from Miriam Blumenfeld on the monitor. And while that is loading up, I just want to say that I've known Laura and her family for 27 years. And I think the first time that I met your mom was at Dylan's bar mitzvah. So it was about 5 years after we became friends. And one thing that I remember about your mom is that she had an amazing sense of fashion, and she had a really funny sense of humor. And I remember her making jokes at Dylan's bar mitzvah, like as a toast. And she loved her grandchildren so much. That was very evident every time I spent time with her at your family simchas. So here is Miriam offering a eulogy.
Good morning. I'm going to assume that someone will alert me if you can't hear me. And I have to apologize for the background. It's for work. I tried to change it. I failed. But I guess that's something that I share with Joan, a certain technical incapacity. So let's just say that this is also in her honor. I was asked to write a eulogy for Joan, but it feels like an impossible task. Eulogies are for people who are gone. It feels impossible that Joan is gone. Eulogies are summaries of the impact that lost loved ones have had on our lives. It is impossible to summarize who Joan was and her indelible imprint on all of us who knew and loved her. Joan's life force was one of the fiercest, most stubborn, most indestructible that I have ever known. As my father, her beloved brother Joseph, would have said, Joan was a force to be reckoned with. I know that some of us would think of that reckoning with some rue and some angst, because Joan was never a benign or easy spirit. Joan commanded attention, vigilance, and her due, maybe more than her due, at all times. She took up most of the space in the room, but she lit up every room she was in. There was the sheer intensity of her presence, her persistent, sometimes discordant charm, her unfiltered opinions, her voluble sharing of history and feelings, but also the glamour, the fabulous clothes, the ropes and drapes of jewelry. Who needs subtlety when you can have beauty? But these are generalities that barely capture the crudest outline of who Joan was. How can I possibly convey the full force of this woman, magnificent in her unquenchable spirit, maddening in her insistence on dominating her world, trying her best to change reality to suit her desire? Joan was forged in the same fire as my dad, with a father who tried to crush her, and her mother, Rachel, who was beautiful and wise, but perhaps never protected Joan quite well enough. Joan refused to be crushed or held down. She used her fine mind and her will and traveled far away from the oppression of her childhood. Her resilience and persistence triumphed over and over again as she confronted illness, heartbreak, financial woes, and other assorted adversities, some self-inflicted, others seemingly arbitrary. Through it all, Joan fell and rose every time, always continuing her quest for love, life, connection, and beauty. To me, she was the fabulous aunt, but not just my aunt. She was also the prodding voice that pushed and insisted that I live this life and not just walk through it. From her, I learned that a photograph is not just a rendering or an image. It is a pulsing reminder of what it means to be alive. So many times she would visit my office or my home and scold me for the nakedness of my walls. She would exhort me to find pictures of the people that I loved or art that spoke to me and surround myself with it. I still hear her insistent command, "This is your life, Miriam." And she wasn't just talk. She gifted me with her own extraordinary work, her photographs, her crafted pillows, the wild, fantastical scarves and shawls that still make me feel wrapped in magic, beauty, and aspiration. Throughout her life, Joan was propelled to share her passion, her pain, her creativity through artistic expression, photographs, knitting, pillows, craft work, wall hangings. Every one of her pieces of art eschewed the pedestrian, contested the ordinary. Her photography skewed toward the ethereal, the mysterious, the current, moving beneath and beyond the faces and forms of her subjects. Her haunting photographic images are hung in permanent art collections, in galleries and museums, available still to anyone who wants to see the world through Joan's eyes, the ordinary world made extraordinary. Joan's other artistic work glimmered with color and the wholehearted embrace of the sensual world, along with the metaphysical one. And that is what Joan brought to every interaction that I had with her. The frank, sometimes overly candid embrace of life and love in all of their multidimensional imperfection. Joan could drive you crazy. She would not be quiet and she would not be subdued. In this, Joan and my father were alike. They shared larger than life personalities, and it led to a tumultuous relationship and titanic disagreements. There were times when I thought my father would finally wash his hands of her, since she refused to accept the role of acolyte. How could she be anyone's acolyte when she was the one who commanded homage? And yet, for both of them, the ferocity of their loyalty to one another always won out. As my father would say many, many times, sometimes with pride, sometimes with anger, sometimes with resignation, always with love. I only have one sister. I remember going to restaurants with Joan and my dad and wishing the floor would open up and swallow me whole as they got into disagreements, voices raised, neither of them backing down. The embarrassment extended to Joan's haughty treatment of waiters, demanding the same obeisance from them that she did from everybody else. One time, I recall, we were all at a Chinese restaurant and Joan wanted Thousand Island dressing for her salad. When the waiter apologetically confessed that they had none, Joan was outraged and demanded loudly that the waiter bring mayonnaise and ketchup because, insert profanity here, she would just make her own, and she did. Another time, another restaurant, Joan decided that the light coming through the window was just wrong. She asked the waiter to fix it, but was dissatisfied with the result. Her solution was to leave the table and spend 10 minutes opening and closing the floor-to-ceiling drapes, rearranging, studying the result, and trying again, until she finally demanded a piece of rope from the restaurant staff and tied the curtain back. There are far too many memories to be recounted because every encounter with Joan was memorable. She was that fierce. That ferocity extended to her insistence that we be family. She was the glue, as my father was far too wrapped up in his own work and his own life to reach out. Joan always reached out. And if we didn't reach back, she would pursue us, hound us, and ultimately show up, invited or not. Every crisis, every celebration, Joan was there. When my father had a heart attack, Joan was there, cooking dinners, leaving the dishes for my mother, scolding my dad if he overexerted himself, and most importantly, infusing all of us with the insistent triumph of life over apathy, embrace over entropy, complacency, surrender. These were never options. Over and over again, Joan would appear so that now my memory of every crisis, every landmark, every celebration is punctuated with her presence. To say that she will be missed, that she leaves a hole, is the most painful of understatements. I know that Joan had an impact on many people, and there is no way to mention them all. I know that my mother, Frances, will miss her. They spoke every night, drank too much wine at every visit. Who will my mother take care of now? I can hear my mother saying with an exasperated tone that Joan inspired in many of us, "Joni, don't worry, it will be fine." I know that my sister Julie and I will miss her, our fabulous aunt, a perennial visitation of glamour and disruption. Our children will miss her. All of us kids will miss her. The grandchildren, the great niece and great nephews. Every single one of us has worn Joan's bright red lipstick kisses on our cheeks, planted on us whether we wanted them or not. I know that Ed will miss her. They were such devoted partners, egging each other on to mischief, living like teenagers, refusing with glorious intransigence to accept old age. They were also romantic with each other. They kissed, they drank wine, they called each other sweetheart. They were sweethearts. I know that Joan wanted to marry Ed, but I have to say, he was clearly a fantastic boyfriend. To her grandchildren, Sarah, Natalie, Ayla, Rachel, Dylan, Esther, Miriam, and Sean, I know that you were her jewels. She adored all of you. As far as she was concerned, each one of you is beautiful and gifted. I remember the last time that I saw Joan in Chicago. She was in the hospital again, that time with pneumonia, and some of the grandchildren came to visit. Joan was in her glory, lit from within, somehow glamorous, even without makeup, even in a hospital bed and a hospital gown. It was blindingly beautiful. And last but never least, Joan's children, David, Ruth, Laura, and Josh. Maybe it is hard to remember the softness inside her, but I had the privilege of seeing her love for all of you, perhaps even more clearly than you could. I don't know how much she showed you. Of all the things that she said about you, the one that has stayed with me always was this. We were talking about what gave us joy. Joan told me that nothing compared with the birth of her children. The way that I remember it, she said, the 4 happiest, most important moments in my life were the 4 times they put that baby in my arms. I swear she really did say that, and she meant it. There was no audience, just me. So How do we go on from here? How do we navigate a world without Joan in it? I have two thoughts. The first comes from a memory. One year, Joan came to visit us for Passover. She sat beside me and tolerated me playing with my new camera, trying to take her picture. She could feel me looking at her through the lens, and she said, in her drink and cigarette roughened voice, husky with experience and a lifetime of indulgence and appetite, "If I were you, I'd come closer." That is part of her legacy. Don't watch life from the sidelines. Step into it. Step into the middle of it. Be bold, be flawed, be human. Come closer. My second thought is this. Joan was a singular, demanding, vivid spirit. The world will now be forever quieter, grayer, duller. Still, if in passing, there is a woman of a certain age, wafting perfume, or you see the glimmer of jewels, or hear someone talking just a bit too loudly, expressing opinions with the fearlessness of a person determined to claim her place in this life, then perhaps Joan exhorts you still. This is your life. Embrace all of its beauty, all of its pain, all of your memories of her, and live for as long as your heart beats. Finally, in Joan's honor, I ask you to join me in a moment of fancy and imagine her happy, sitting with her beloved brother Joseph. Joan has her lipstick on, her hair is done, she is wearing all of her rings, and they are arguing, as my sister says, about whether to watch football or baseball or maybe tennis. No agreement, no concessions, but joy in the contest, neither of them backing down. And so I end where I started. No eulogy is possible for a woman like Joan. We keep living and we keep her with us. My pictures are up. My life is around me. I am here with all of you. Joan is a part of us, always.
Hello. Well, I definitely feel like the less adequate Miriam. That was good. Okay. Recently, I was struck with the deep recognition. I didn't want to cry. That our time is finite. That our opportunities to talk to, spend time with, and enjoy the people we love are limited. At first, that kind of sounds like a grim thought. But I found myself reinvigorated by it. I was inspired to do something because I didn't know how long I would have to. So I started a video project with my grandma, and I'm very happy I did. I went to her apartment and set up my camera, and we talked for hours, over days, for weeks. In that time, I heard so many wonderful stories and learned of so many experiences. And it's with that knowledge that I can say with complete conviction, she really loved every person in this room. I got the privilege to hear about the time she spent with you. I heard about what inspired her, stories of her kids, her grandkids, her friends, about how she found love again with Ed. And all of it, simply put, is beautiful. Our lives are our memories, the moments we spent with the people we love. It's one of life's gifts to care about somebody, and what a gift it is to know that they cared about you too. Each person here should know that they were in her heart, just as she is in yours. And my hope is that we can all celebrate the life and art of my grandma, just as she celebrated all of you. I feel nothing but love. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a prayer in Judaism and in Jewish mourning rituals called El Maleh Rachamim. It's on the top of page 2 of your handout, if you have one. And this prayer is an acknowledgement that what flows within us and between us is love and relationship and compassion. And so this prayer offers compassion to all of us who are mourning Joan, and also offers a hope for comfort and rest. So I'll sing the first sentence of this prayer, and then we can all say the English together. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim. Hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina. Hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim. Let's say together, may the source full of compassion grant rest and comfort beneath the sheltering wings of sacred presence. May the soul and spirit of Joan Moss be a blessing to those who knew and loved her. May her memory be a blessing and live on in the memories of her family and friends. May the wellspring of compassion bring her rest, and may her spirit merge with the oneness that moves all time, space, and existence. May she know peace. It's customary to end a funeral with the mourner's Kaddish, which doesn't talk about death at all. It only speaks of lifting up the name that has many names and has no name. And so I ask that if you are comfortable, now is the time to stand, and we can say Mourner's Kaddish together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon, uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Leolam Olmei Omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei Dekudsha Brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemaya V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru Amen. May the mourners be comforted with the gates of Zion and Jerusalem. So you can be seated. There will be a Shiva gathering at 1:30 at David Moss's house, and the address is on page 3 of your handout. There's also going to be a Zoom Shiva gathering, and so if you'd like to attend that, please get in touch with Laura for the Zoom link. And then there is burial information forthcoming. Thank you all for being here, for remembering the life of Joan Moss.
This concludes our service here in the chapel and on our live stream. The interment will take place at Sunset Memorial Lawn Cemetery in Northbrook. Please note that the family has asked that memorial contributions be made to the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. Those of you who are present in the chapel have it on your service folder. Those of you who are online will be able to see it on our website. For those of you who are going in procession with the family to the cemetery, please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker. The sticker should be placed on the front passenger side of the windshield. We would also ask that you have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags on the top of the vehicles throughout the procession. As we drive in procession today, please drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times. Please seek to refrain from utilizing your cellular phone, and I want to avoid any large gaps or spaces as we especially go through intersections. At this time, I would ask everyone to rise as Ms. Moss, her family, and the Rabbi Aviv are escorted from the chapel.
I would just be remiss if no one said this, but Baba, we love you to pieces.
Thank you, David. Let's see if this is... No, I think, can everybody hear me now? Okay. We're going to hear a eulogy from Miriam Blumenfeld on the monitor. And while that is loading up, I just want to say that I've known Laura and her family for 27 years. And I think the first time that I met your mom was at Dylan's bar mitzvah. So it was about 5 years after we became friends. And one thing that I remember about your mom is that she had an amazing sense of fashion, and she had a really funny sense of humor. And I remember her making jokes at Dylan's bar mitzvah, like as a toast. And she loved her grandchildren so much. That was very evident every time I spent time with her at your family simchas. So here is Miriam offering a eulogy.